there's the data. So that really brings us to the ultimate question. What is the cause? Well, birth rates. In 1960, the birth control pill hit the market. The importance and impact of this little fun drug cannot possibly be overstated. This was literally a biological game changer, a chemical augmentation that allowed the human animal to indulge the base biological drive for sex without being automatically saddled with the biological cost of reproduction. It was a fundamental disruption to the evolutionary imperative. Almost immediately, the birth rate plummets into a state of absolute freefall. It is a perfect inverse correlation, with the other statistics like divorce rates trailing behind by a few years. By 1969, when Ronald Reagan first introduced no-fault divorce in the state of California, the national divorce rate had already skyrocketed and reached its maximum rate of exponential growth. By 1977, when universal no-fault divorce was implemented across the entire country, the divorce epidemic had basically already reached its peak. These changes to divorce law, which get blamed for just about everything, were frankly nothing more than a collection of reactionary political platitudes that simply codified what had already become the overwhelming cultural norm in America. What you are looking at here is the very core of my thesis. We see a biological change, followed by a cultural change, followed by an ideological change. And ideological feminism is no exception. It is completely reactionary. Its complaints and its ideological attitudes simply reflect the mainstream cultural environment of the day. In the late 50s and early 60s, it was Betty Friedan talking about women's place in a changing labour market, after they had already been put to work as part of the total war economy of the early to mid-40s. Germaine Greer published her famous Female Eunuch in 1970, reflecting an already established culture of female sexual empowerment. Valerie Solanas was slightly ahead of the curve with the Scum Manifesto in 1967. Although she was still clearly chronologically trailing behind rising divorce, crime and suicide rates, and despite being considered a radical at the time by her mainstream contemporaries like Friedan, she really served as a sign of things to come. By the late 70s and early 80s, the compounding cultural changes in divorce, reproduction, crime, suicide and single motherhood provided a cultural environment where no longer radical but rather mainstream feminism had flourished into a full-blown hate movement, with mainstream proponents like Andrea Dworkin and Susan Brownmiller proclaiming all men to be violent rapists. Fast forward another 30 years and here we are now. Thanks to the pandemic hysteria and slacktivist rallying campaigns afforded by instant online communication platforms like Twitter and Change.org, third-wave feminism, along with the rest of the modern social justice movement, are potentially crazier than all other social movements that have come before. But hopefully, you've already recognized the inherent problem. Making fun of, or even crafting serious exposés on individuals like Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian and Jonathan Butler is going to do absolutely fucking nothing to change the ubiquitous cultural environment in which these crazed ideologues flourish. Trying to change the ideological software is not going to change our cultural operating system. That would require the biological hardware upgrade to be physically uninstalled and put back into the birth control bottle, and that just isn't going to happen.